Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you're ready to take on your next paying clients, I have good news. My free 4 Basics of Client Attraction and How to Stand Out class is live at haileyrowe.com/client-attraction. In the class, you're going to learn the top 2 traits I recommend for most coaches and entrepreneurs if they really want to turn this into a career. You're going to learn how you can build demand for your services and stop getting crickets on your posts. You're going to learn the sales roadmap I used to improve my sales conversion rate and help my clients do the same. And you're going to learn so much more. So go to haileyrowe.com/client-attraction and get your copy of the class today. She has her work stemming in the intersection between science and magic, the practical and the energetic. And she is here to talk with us a little bit about what we should be thinking about if we want, as business owners, to reach our full potential and be in our authentic selves, and making more sales and getting more done, but doing it through flow state and other things that she's going to share with us today. So, Lindsay, why don't we kick off by, can you just tell me what is a priestess? Tell me more.
Yeah, a professional priestess is someone who stands in between the two spaces. So not just in our physical reality, but also starts to bridge into our energetic. So for those of you who are more science focused, those of us who play with the electromagnetic field, those of us who interact with the liminal space between who you are right now and who you desire to be, or that version of you that's calling to you to have that business, have that family, live in that way. And so the work that I offer is beyond just the physical reality of talking about strategy and talking about perspective and talking about tactics. It's all about, what do you need to believe about the self? What do you need to do that's inside that's going to create the outside that you're asking for? Moving into things like the feelings and the awareness, and really playing in the space that I like to say magic comes from, the space in between the protons, the neutrons, and the electrons.
Cool. Okay. And yesterday we were talking about sales and sales confidence, and it was on Instagram. If you guys want to go to @Hailey_Rowe, or Lindsay, what's your username?
It's on Our and R, OURANDARE on Instagram.
Yes. But let's kind of pick up on that. So tell me a little bit, as somebody who does bring in some of the practical, but also some of the spiritual and energetic world. How do you define sales, and what has helped you personally be successful in your business with sales?
So for me, sales is, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but shifting from that more typical sales perspective to this idea that your sales is this invitation. I like to see my sales as this lighthouse beaming out into the darkness, illuminating that ideal path, so that when that ideal path is lit up for someone who has been searching for this work or calling to this work, or my favorite, the magnetic core, where you are actually pulled towards the things that you desire, and the things that you desire are pulling you towards them. So I really like to approach sales from that double-sided directive, where my ideal soulmate clients are trying to find what they're looking for, and I'm trying to make it as clear as possible, as understandable as possible in both the mind, the body, and the energy, so that we can both find each other. And I am interviewing as much as they are interviewing in our sales conversation. So really looking for those perfect fits together is what sales really means to me.
I love that. Yeah. And when you feel, do you ever have self-doubt, or, oh, maybe I, did that sales pitch wrong, or kind of that like negative self-talk? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I've actually experienced that a whole lot more in the past like 2 years than ever before. At the beginning of my business, I kind of came out of the gate, guns a blazing, with a lot of confidence. It was this very clear path from like what I was doing to what I really was called to do and wanted to do. But recently, the next level of my business in the past like 2 years, I've started to experience that more and more and more, not necessarily specifically with like, ooh, in that sales conversation, I wish I hadn't said this or I wish I had said this. More the overall perspective where I lose this confidence and faith in my ideal soulmate client and have to kind of come back to the inner work that it takes to clearly understand the different facets. Because as a professional priestess, it's a little bit more ambiguous who that ideal soulmate client is. We're not just breaking down a client avatar and saying, okay, this is their profession and this is how much money they make and this is their age range. A lot of times, what really identifies someone as my ideal client is something that they're going through, something that they're getting close to going through. Their understanding of the self and whether or not they can recognize when they're in patterns, or oh, I'm in a pattern and I want to move out of that, or they're able to understand what is keeping them small or that something is keeping them small. So I've actually had to do quite a bit of that inner work that allows me to really get clear on who my ideal client is, so that when I'm creating content, speaking, inviting people, doing the like hooks and the CTA, it feels really aligned and authentic and doesn't feel like I'm trying to talk to a client avatar. I'm really feeling and experiencing what that person is going to feel like when they find this work, when they're like, oh, wow, she's in my head. She knows what I'm talking about. She knows what I'm going through. Even if it's not the specificity of that big event, I might not know the details of what happened to get you there or what fell apart to create this situation, but describing the feelings and the experience, what your frequency is right now. If you were a record and I, the record player, what song would we be hearing as you're looking for coaching, leadership, mentorship, guidance, and you're really willing to go inward for it? I think that's the big difference between my work and a lot of other practitioner or professional work. I'm not here to give you this overview and just help you implement it. Because of the intuitive process, it's a lot of helping other people understand and listen to their own intuition. And that brings us right back to flow, because when you can understand your own intuition, when you can really be present with those little nudges inside you, when you can figure out, how does my intuition talk to me? How does it come through? How do I experience it? And how do I follow that? How do I minimize the time between the knowing and the doing and the following through? That's what will really skyrocket your business a lot of times, is that collapsing time in between the, oh, I'm second guessing myself, and I'm able to put it out there with confidence.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, listening to ourselves. It's so funny how we have to like get support with that because
Yes.
we
Yes.
become so used to hearing other people tell us we need to do something, or society's pressure, or Instagram,
Yeah.
highlight reels. And so I'm curious, for somebody who wants to, maybe they're working on their business, but they are struggling to get into that flow state. They're always second guessing themselves. They take forever to do any task because they're kind of like overthinking every step.
Yeah.
What are some ways they can start to ease into flow and define flow for them, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I love to break down flow into the three types of flow. And I think as entrepreneurs, a lot of us know one type of flow, and we can sometimes know one or the other too, but we are very focused in the active flow, the doing, the actual sitting down at the computer and typing out or recording content or creating that sales page, the thing that we're putting out there into the world. And I think most of us are pretty clear on active flow of like when you get into that vibe and you're able to like move through those tasks and you're feeling really confident. But when that's not working, what else are you doing? How do you get yourself back into that space? So the other two types of flow are passive flow, which means when you're receiving. So maybe you know you need to create a sales page and you're not necessarily sure how to do the back end of that. We need passive flow first, where we're actually receiving, studying, learning, digesting, and then we're able to move into the active flow of producing for ourselves. The other flow is neutral flow. And especially for us entrepreneurs, I think this one is so important and it's oftentimes left off the list. Neutral flow is where you can be almost an autopilot, where you can almost go to that liminal space and allow the downloads to come through. Now, I understand that might sound a little bit woo-woo, and I'll put it in more of a scientific perspective. Let's use Thomas Edison as our example. So this man used to sit with a metal ball in his hand over a metal plate in one of his favorite chairs and would nod off and drop the metal ball into the metal plate, and it would wake him up. And that in-between state of falling asleep and connecting to, however you want to refer to that, if that's connecting to a higher power, or if that's connecting to the dream space, if that's a different brainwave, if that's the quantum for you, but it's in that space that allows you to have access to the things that you can't just Google. So for instance, with our sales page, you can study how to put the back end in and how to make that button work and how to make sure that connects to your opt-in. But what are you going to say about your services? What are you going to say about who that ideal fit is? How are you going to position what it is that you're offering? A lot of times that comes through in the neutral flow state. And that is oftentimes a lot of what we as entrepreneurs are told to take off of our plate. Oh, the washing of the dishes, oh, the folding of the laundry, oh, the taking care of the kids, oh, the organizing of this. And a lot of times that neutral flow space where you can kind of focus but kind of tap out when you're doing the dishes, your hands are making the movement and your mind's kind of wandering. If you choose to, instead of putting in your headphones and listening to a podcast, which is passive flow where you're receiving, if you stay in that open state, if you maybe ask yourself a question or give yourself that focus for that flow state, and then just allow yourself to be and move in that autopilot, that is a beautiful way to receive your downloads, to make those connections, to allow those Tetris pieces to drop in. So I think it's really important to just start to look at how you operate in flow and look at one of your days. And just like when we're doing breath work, don't try to edit it first. Just ask yourself, how much time am I spending in active flow, in passive flow, and in neutral flow? In my day, am I hitting each of these? In my workday, am I only hitting active flow? And then by the time I have some time and space at home, I'm going directly to zonking out because all I've done is force active. So just taking stock of that and considering, do I know how to engage with each of these types of flow? And if not, could I attempt to work each of the types of flow into my day? And starting small. If you've never worked with neutral flow before, don't try and do half your day as neutral flow. Try and just sit for a few moments while you're folding laundry or while you're putting your bag together without any input and just allow for a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. That's so interesting. I think a lot of us can relate to feeling very much in active flow or feeling the pressure to be in active flow all the time as entrepreneurs. So for someone who's maybe in doing some passive flow or the other types, how can they do that? Like, let's say it's new to them and they're doing small steps. But they have like a little voice that's like, you shouldn't be doing this. You got to be working all the time. And they kind of equate some of their worth to how much they're accomplishing or something like that. What are some ways to kind of break free from that or start to tap into that and realize that's not serving you?
Yeah, I like to back into this. So I will a lot of times ask people who have that type of objection of like, okay, but how am I going to take my 8 or 10 or 12 or 15-hour workday and drop this down to something that is more manageable? And a lot of times it's asking them to do less and to maybe accomplish less, and they have a resistance to this. So I come from the other direction. I'm like, in a perfect world, if your business was operating exactly how you wanted it to operate, making the amount of money that you wanted it to, having the number of employees, like we get to this place of like, ooh, yes, this is how I want my business to go. Are you still working that many hours? And a lot of times there's that pause moment of like, oh, well, maybe I don't want to keep working 15 or 10 or 8 hours. So then we start to look at, okay, if we're trying to build a business that is your ideal business, not the ideal business, how would you want it to look? And then I start offering the question of like, okay, if you could get 4 hours worth of work done in 2 hours, if you could get 4 hours worth of work done in 30 minutes, and it was more efficient and it was in flow, and after you were done with that you felt super accomplished, and then we're able to go spend 30 minutes on making a lunch and sitting down in the middle of the day to review that podcast or just sit and look out the window and watch the birds. Like, how would that feel? And a lot of times backing into that allows people to go, oh, wow, I'm forcing myself to do this much active work because I think it's going to get me to what I want, how I want to feel, or how I want my business to go. And for some of us, there is a time where you're working a whole lot more to achieve that, but really allowing your brain and your body and your energy to have the end goal, to see where are we moving towards? How am I vectoring in that direction? And just that level of awareness into your systems can change your ability to navigate those flows a little bit easier, because you actually start to consider, wow, if I'm doing it like this and I have no plan, no trajectory, no desire to get somewhere else, how am I actually going to land in that place? So maybe we go from a 10-hour day to an 8-hour day, and we start to become more efficient in the places that we want to accomplish. Or maybe you start to be willing to stop something when you get to that frustration point. Instead of forcing yourself to continue going and take a project that might only take 30 minutes and turn it into an hour and a half because you're resistant, when you start to listen to your own system and start to operate in flow more often, you change time. And we all know that a microwave minute and a treadmill minute and that first kiss minute, those are not the same times. We all understand in our own ways that time is a relative thing. And so stretching and playing with time in that way, once again, even just the understanding that, oh, wow, yeah, when I'm watching the microwave, that minute takes a whole lot longer than when I have to get somewhere and could be late in a minute.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's such a great point because, also you see people who, for example, there's some people who work a ton, but they don't feel burnout in the slightest. Like they are energized, they love the way they use their time. And then you see some people working the same amount of hours, but they're burnt out, they're miserable. It goes by so slow. And so I think you make a really good point about it's not about the time. It's not about, oh, I worked X number of hours, so now I'm good or I deserve, a break or whatever. It's more what in the time that you're doing things, how does it feel? What is, right? Like what would you say to that?
Yeah, it's really being connected to you in the moment. And like it is something that I still remind myself of regularly, because there are those moments where you're like in the middle of doing something and you've been in flow, and like I like to work from different cafes and I'll be like really in it, and then I'll like see something or get distracted and I've like lost that flow. And I have that moment where like sometimes I just dive right back in and I almost force myself and I feel it taking longer and I'm like, oh, I just want to get it done. Like I'm almost there. And that's always the time where I like stretch it and it's not as good. And then I've made like maybe too many slides and which ones go together. And if I just allow myself to stop and either recalibrate or check in and go, okay, what is exciting to me? What could I maybe just get through a couple of emails and then come back to that? When you start to work with yourself instead of telling yourself what to do, that is a big shift in your business. And I think so many of us are solo entrepreneurs, or we have, our 1099 contractors, and we're not at this point running a massive team, and yet we are running ourselves like we are a manager who doesn't care about our wellness. And like we started these businesses to operate in different ways, and yet so many of us just dive into the business and we don't take the time to consider, how do I define success? What are my requirements? If I am, the CEO or the director of myself, the individual contributor, how am I treating myself? How am I talking to myself? How am I assigning things to myself? What is that relationship? I think that's missed a lot in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, 100%. Amazing. So, what's something that you going forward, we're in April right now. So in 2025, is there any key messages or things that keep coming up for you that now going forward with the rest of the year you really want to tap into, or like a big lesson you've learned this year or anything like that you want to share?
Yeah, my methodology for how to do inner work or self work that really creates tangible results has been fully birthed this year. I've been creating this and digesting this and reflecting this for so many years. And I think our society, especially with therapy, I speak to this in particular in my industry all the time. We got to this place where therapy was a much more accepted practice. And I absolutely love that for people, having someone to talk to and reflect. But in entrepreneurship in particular, so many of us have spent so much time self-reflecting that we've almost gotten into this loop of self-reflection and self-actualization and looking at self and analyzing self and talking about self, but we don't know how to partner that with the active practice. And so for me this year in 2025, everything's coming back to this talking through active processing and active practicing. And active practicing is this missing piece that I see so many business owners and individuals missing out on. You have intellectualized so much, you have talked about so much, you have thought about so much, maybe you've written so much down, you've researched so much, we've input so much, and yet where is this connection point, these two sides of the DNA strand on that spiral path to grow, to heal, to actualize in a way that changes your life, not just changes your mind? Because that's really what we want. Our inner work should be here to make our lives more enjoyable, more efficiently, allow us to runway to get to the things that we want, because our desires are meant for us. Like, you have these desires because they're meant for you. They're not frivolous, they're not random. With how much exposure we have to so many things, the things that light you up, those are not arbitrary, guys. Those are really for you. So really focusing on not just thinking your way through things, but actually applying the being and the doing. And so that is where a lot of my work is focused, of getting into someone's system and seeing, okay, let me see all the dominoes that you've set up. And then we need that active practice to just flick that first domino and let everything start to fall in place for you. Because a lot of time, the analysis, the thinking, the planning, the perspective, the reflecting on it, all of that's in place, but then how do I actually become a different person? Whether that's subconscious rewiring, whether that's, EFT tapping, whether that's EDMR, but actually including the body and the energy and not just the mind. So for me, that's what I'm really focused on this year.
I love that. Yes. So where can people stay connected with you? Before we get into that, we were talking earlier about niche and ideal clients. So I just want to do a little quick mention, y'all. If you are stuck on that, I have a free message mastery and niche cheat sheet at haileyrowe.com. But if you're like, I'm hearing all this stuff Lindsay's saying, and yes, I need that. I need to tap into my body more. I need to get out of my head. I'm in my head all the time.
Yeah.
Where can people connect with you and find you?
You can find me right here on LinkedIn, Lindsay Schroeder. You can also see my business here, Our and R, OURANDARE. I am also on Instagram and TikTok under that same handle, OURANDARE. You can also shoot me an email at ourandrad@gmail.com. I would love to talk to you. I would love to offer you the free perspectives on things that I have, as well as talking you through the different ways that you can approach this marrying of those two pieces, so that you don't just get stuck in the thinking and wanting, but you can attach it to the being and the doing.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful, and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.